every month. And so Jite runs different kinds of meditation, Zen meditation and meditation retreat days, and a beautiful ceremony of tea happens here as a meditation. I'm a sound therapist, so I run things to do with sound and singing, and Zed and Yvonne are both, they run a group helping families or people who are living with people who have drug or alcohol abuse to come to a place of compassion and forgiveness themselves. We're opening up a space for refugees and asylum seekers to seek some sort of therapeutic support. And there's a few other things that are sort of spring. These are all happening from us just opening the doors and people coming. So that's where you are, and these amazing, amazing things have happened in this room, and this is one of them. So thank you very much to Francis for asking, and it's been great to meet you and connect with you as well. And this is really a place of meditation, prayer, and it's got focused intention.
Yes, beautiful.
Promoting peace in the community and peace in our own hearts. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I was so just honoured when Francis said there's an opportunity to just meet and have conversation, and I've been looking forward to that. And we actually just met last week in Windermere. Many of the people that are here, we did a stop there, and so it's so good to see all of you again. It's wonderful. When Francis told me about the opportunity to have a conversation, I was kind of amazed at how things come together, because I just picked up a little book by Thomas Merton, Zen and the Birds of Prey, where he was in conversation from his tradition with Zen masters and things over a long period of time. And it's not that I know anything much about it, but I was so blessed by the openness to conversation that was displayed there. And so maybe I must just share my intention for this evening, and so that you know hopefully where we're going, how that can unfold. I love the conversation around things, and there is a way of interpreting the message and the person of Jesus that is radically subversive to religion and to the current dominant kind of culture in our place. And I want to maybe just take 20 minutes or so to share what it is that has so impacted me in that message, and then kind of after that open it up for a conversation to go further. Does that sound okay?
Sounds
great. One of the things that I was so blessed with by the end of last year is we, after travelling quite extensively for a number of years, my wife and I found ourselves back in South Africa, where we originally came from, and we went on a walk on a place called Cape Point, and it was just a stunningly beautiful morning. And we were there before any tourists arrived, so it was all unspoiled, and we've never been there, and the sunrise was magnificent. And as we kind of discovered this little path, it opened up onto this beautiful sandy beach below some cliffs, and it felt like this is how this place has been like for millions of years. It was like Jurassic Park, unspoiled. And just at the moment we thought, this can't get any better, was these dolphins that just started jumping through the waves, and we both just stood there breathless. So, wow, do you see that? And that moment of breathless wonder, I think, is often maybe the best way of describing beauty. But even that beauty that you can recognize, wow, we would all want to see that, partake of it. We also know that no matter how beautiful a scene is that we experience, it never captures all that beauty is. Beauty is not just something we just observe, it's something that we enter into. It disrupts our indifference and draws us to what is worth pursuing. And yet, that moment of just astonishment is the best description of that beauty, because beauty never subjects itself to any one description or to any one picture, but it so generously gives itself to anyone who's simply prepared to be astonished. And unfortunately, what we often do is we try and capture that beauty in our descriptions, and we package it in our understanding, and that way of trying to capture truth in dogma, I think that is the modern way of producing idols. It's a kind of abstract idol, but we think we've now captured it in a specific way of saying it. But there's another way of approaching words, and that is to use your words to inspire others to go and enjoy that beauty for themselves. So for instance, if tonight I said, listen, you don't have to go to South Africa to experience that dolphins and things yourselves. Just listen carefully to what I say, believe it, and that will be your experience. I've just made an idol of my words. But if my words becomes an icon, if they point beyond themselves to a reality greater than those words, then they become the beautiful icon that they're supposed to be, that recognizes that the words will never capture it fully. And so I want to tell that simple story because I want to kind of make it clear that what I want to share tonight points beyond itself to an experience larger than just the ideas or the concepts, because it's so easy for us to worship our concept of God, isn't it? And unfortunately, I think that's where many people find themselves. They don't really experience God, they experience their concept of God. And very often, the only way in which you're going to experience more of God, however you want to imagine what that means, but the only way in which you experience more is for the confines of that concept to kind of be deconstructed and to disappear. And it's almost in that process of losing your definitions, of undefining God, of undefining yourself, that something so much bigger opens up. And so I'm going to rush through this story because this is really just going to be a summary, because I want to come to the crescendo at the end, which is so beautiful. But the concepts, where do we get our concepts of God? And somebody that has had a huge influence on modern understanding of human culture, how it developed, on mythology, where we got our ideas of the gods from, is René Girard. And one of the books that kind of made him popular was The Sacred and Violence. And in there, very shortly, he describes, based on all origin myths, based on rituals, and based on archaeology, that it seems like human sacrifice is one of the first events that gives birth to new civilizations, which is quite shocking. This brutal act of violence is what united people. And let me just give you the conclusion of his story. I don't want to explain how it works, but basically that act in which we murder one of our own, that act of violence is so disturbing that we cannot accept we've done it. And so we ask, what justice did this person offend to deserve this fate? And so most of your origin myths imagines gods who are very violent. And so René Girard's kind of theory, mimetic theory, basically states that the gods that we've created in myths, which is often very violent, it always tells the story of an original state of chaos, a creative act of violence that brings about a new unity. The gods created by these myths are really nothing more than the projection of what we cannot bear to see in ourselves. So the gods are not always the projection just of our highest ideals, of our highest goods. It seems like specifically the gods in myth, the gods that are used to justify our violence, is nothing more than the projection of our own violence. And somehow we've got to justify it. And so this is one of the things that has so changed my understanding of the message that Jesus actually brings. Because throughout human history, we've created these gods who justifies our systems of injustice, who justifies the process of scapegoating, who justifies that we find our identity in who we are against and who is not part of us. And here comes Jesus, and the message that is specifically contained in the idea of incarnation is so radically subversive. First of all, even the idea that God could find his existence in flesh. I mean, how heretical. But this message that the God we meet in Jesus is not a God who calls you to a higher level of spirituality, but the God who descends into your humanity. A God who comes down into your here and now experience and says, this is where I find my existence. In the many of the pagan ways of conceiving God, there was, and within that context, within many of the Jewish ideas as well, God was so distant. And so we read these beautiful myths of the gods sitting on their clouds, and they can observe a birth or a murder, a wedding or a war, and it doesn't move them, because if they allow themselves to be moved, they will lose their peace. So their definition of peace is this place where there's no pain, no interruption, no confrontation. And how radical this idea is that John gives us in 1 John 1:14, that God pours himself into human flesh. He enters into our world and he does not lose his peace. But he brings his peace right into the middle of our crap, right into the middle of this world with all its chaos, with all its confrontation and contradiction. This is where he's going to bring his peace. And so in a very real way, Jesus doesn't come to just strengthen your faith in God, But he comes first and foremost to make you an atheist to the God of your own making. He comes first and foremost to bring your concepts of God, your ideas about him, your way of confining the infinite. Your way of subjecting God to your understanding. He comes to bring that to an end. Because just as beauty has never subjected itself fully to any one description, God has never subjected himself to any one understanding of God. And so, the way in which Jesus then takes us back to that founding event, the event that most myths tells us this is the birth of Rome or it's the birth of this civilization, it always involves a founding murder. And so Jesus is going to take us back to that event that perverted our ideas about God. That event in which we took all the evil that we just refused to recognize and projected it onto a distant God. He's going to take us back to that event. And so in the crucifixion, we come face to face with the fact that where is God in suffering? Where is God in violence? God is not the one who justifies our violence. God is the one who suffers our violence. Okay. God is the one who is with the outcast, the one who is with the weak, the one who experiences what they experience. And so it becomes so radically subversive because all of religion throughout the ages have always been used to simply support the status quo. It's been used by empires, and it's, as it is today still, to justify their actions. And there's a beautiful verse in 1 Corinthians 2 that said, had the principalities and powers, the principles and by which we build our societies, the powers that rule, if they had known what they did in crucifying him, they would never have done it. Because for the first time, we come face to face with the truth of what happens in this whole process of producing victims for the sake of maintaining our unity, where God comes and says, I'm not at all in your violence. So that it's interesting, even as human history and stories has developed, for me it's been such a benefit to have a different way of reading Scripture, also as a conversation. And you see how in the oldest text within the biblical literature, God is perceived most violently. And the more the text evolves, the less violent God becomes. Until in Jesus, we've got this story of a God who so renounces violence that he says, I would rather suffer your violence than participate in it. And so that was really the simple idea that I just wanted to share tonight, that there's a way of understanding Jesus, of understanding his message, that takes us beyond just another theory of God. You see, when Jesus appears, he doesn't speak to all his compatriots and say, guys, you had it almost right. I'm coming to kind of just adjust a few of your thoughts. But in Matthew 27:11, I think it says, no one knows the Father. Can you believe it? Here are people who've dedicated themselves to the sacred text for hundreds of years, and Jesus has the audacity to say, you've completely missed it. Your text has not introduced you to the experience, because the thought of God, according to John, doesn't become text. It doesn't become an institution. It becomes flesh. And so what a beautiful way of, again, perceiving the incarnation as God coming to put an end to our concepts of God. Of God not coming to start yet another religion, but of bringing religion to an end. And bringing us face to face with the one place where the divine can be encountered more profoundly than anywhere else. And so again, John writes in 1 John that if you love another, you know God. Doesn't that conclude that message so beautifully? And that, I guess, has been part of the message that we've taken into some Christian circles, which, even within many Christian areas, which is very diverse, as you would know, that is radically new. Because we kind of thought that somehow God delighted in the violence that happened on the cross, that was God getting even, that God wanted blood to satisfy his justice. But there's a beautiful new awareness that's awakening in some parts of Christianity, an awareness that has been part of this conversation for many years, but has been kind of on the fringes. But this awareness that actually what is happening is violence is subverted, not justified. Actually what is happening is this infinite generosity of who God is displays himself as a being who's not in competition with anybody, who's not in rivalry with anyone, but the God of such radical forgiveness that while we are nailing him to the cross, he says, Father, forgive them. It is actually in that very act where our rejection of him is absolute. It is that moment that he chooses to reveal that his acceptance of us is absolute. And so that kind of opens up a new way of experiencing God, doesn't it? Now, when we move beyond the idea of a retributive, vengeful, wrathful deity out there, and we kind of realize that in Jesus we meet a God that's not out there. But what he displays, central to his message is the idea of Emmanuel, God with us. In other words, the true God is not God without us. But in a way, this is God's declaration that I don't want to be God without you. I don't want to be God by myself, with myself, for myself. The only way in which I want to be God is with man, for man, and as mankind. So I wanted to throw that out as I think you would have seen on the website. The whole intention in kind of taking this message out is to reduce violence and to inspire friendship. So unfortunately, a lot of religion is still used to justify violence and to build walls. But thankfully, there's another way of perceiving this gospel that's much more expansive. And with that, I want to open it up to discussions and conversation and thoughts. So I
want to ask you, because it's fantastic that you're speaking about Joel tonight, because I'm really caught with something that I can't resolve, and I wonder how you go about resolving it. And I'm not yet ready to give up the idea of our original goodness. And I think Girard introduces an incredible insight, and he comes from outside of theology.
Yes.
As somebody who, he doesn't credit the insight himself either. He's discovered it in novels, and he says novelists have been using this idea. Maybe they don't know it. But that's how he's arrived at this insight, and then he comes back into religion, theology, with this incredibly penetrating insight. And my understanding of theology has a pre-Girard, post-Girard.
Yes.
It's such a moment of, it just opens up the whole field to something new and moves the whole kind of understanding on, which is fantastic, which is what you've said. The trouble I have is that it seems to point towards legitimising Thomas Hobbes and the role of empire in terms of having the dominant authority to stop us being at each other's throats. That's the problem I have with Girard. And so when I look at the Anabaptists and I look at the anarchists and Peter Kropotkin, who says, no, we want to be rid of authority. We can do it ourselves. We're fine by ourselves. We don't need a dominating authority to keep us from killing each other. We just need to be able to be free of all authority.
Yes.
And that, I'm caught because Girard introduces this incredible insight that just has so much scope for reducing and hopefully ending the violence because we can't legitimise it anymore.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think, well, then I have to give up on. Surely Genesis says we are originally good. So why does this violence seem to be so innate in us that we can't be trusted without authority? How do you resolve that?
And so if I think of the human drama as this unfolding story, then, and I can certainly identify with, I see goodness in people, but people come sometimes into impossible situations. And so if I look at the unfolding nature of the human story, there's a part of the human story which, the further back we go, the more violent it gets, unfortunately. And I don't think because it's of an innate desire for violence, it's because people find themselves in a situation where it's survive or die. And in that situation where you have to make a choice, does one die or everyone die? That seems to be the good choice. And so in a way, what they recognize in such impossible situations, that scapegoating mechanism that today we recognize as that's not right, was actually simply the best option available. And it was the only option available for a very long time. And so, but this is the evolving story. And for me, the power then, and I would so love to kind of hear where your thoughts and things come into this as well. But for me, the power then of what Jesus introduces to human consciousness is that old way of being human, it's run its course. There's another way of being human. And that is, you're going to learn to love, and you're going to learn to forgive, or you're going to destroy one another. So maybe what helped me tremendously in reviewing that is, if I read the Genesis accounts as historical, it makes it very difficult for me to kind of perceive how we went from an original perfection to to what happened there. But if I read those texts as people who wrote it in 580 BC, trying to explore how they understood the creative process of God, the underlying problem of humanity. And then I actually examine what archaeologists and those people tell me about how humanity actually started. Maybe it is that event in which we are in such a difficult situation where we really believe there's only one option out here tonight. This individual's going to die, or we're all going to die. and we're tormented because killing, we know it's wrong, but yet the benefits are so great. And maybe that is the place where the knowledge of good and evil becomes twisted. Maybe that is the event that we've got to justify saving the many, but we justify it by justifying murder. And so maybe that's that event that introduces the knowledge of good and evil. And I don't think that in any way kind of contradicts that if you had the opportunity to speak to any of those people, I think you would have found goodness in them. You would have found generosity and love and the appreciation for beauty in any of them. And that's what makes these stories so powerful, because it tells us that maybe if we don't really become conscious of these cycles, no matter how good you think you are, if you placed, and that's what makes the Passion Week so powerful. Here, Peter and all of the disciples, it's with Jesus, we will never leave you, whatever, but they, the very people who start swearing and says, I don't know that, but man. It kind of puts us in the middle of that story to say, evil is part of a cycle that tries to draw us into the crowd and make us do and say things that we will never do and say as individuals. But seeing that the whole nation is behind me in saying that it's right to murder, it's much easier to justify it. Yeah. I don't know if that helps a bit.
What I draw from that is that the problem, the tendency towards the violence arises in community. That individually, I can see that innate goodness, that original goodness, formed by God. But it's the problem when we come together, and we start to compete, and we sort of experience all those inevitable kind of rivalries and tensions.
Yes.
That out of that emerges this historical kind of solution that's got us this far.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, I don't want to. I may just ask one more thing as well, and it's. I'm really glad that you're hopeful that, because I heard it last night as well. The reduction of violence seems to be what people are observing. That isn't what Gerard observes, and it's not what I observe in terms of how I think maybe there's if there is a reduction of human violence, what I'm seeing in a Gerardian way is actually that's only being bought at the expense of the exportation of that violence onto the natural world. And that we're degrading the natural world and running down the earth, and the earth is now the sacrificial victim on the cross.
Yes.
This sort of endless outpouring of commodities that satiates our rivalry.
Yeah.
But the violence, the aggregate violence, has not been reduced. It's still escalating the way I see it.
Yeah.
And so, I think we need to see the earth as the sacrificial victim and all the animals.
That's a powerful vision of that. And interestingly, Gerard kind of also said that if you now, in this cycle where profane violence, this violence that overruns the world, if that problem was solved by the scapegoat, by reducing the violence to less violence, but it's sacred violence, then if the revelation of Christ is permeating in human consciousness and we become more conscious of victims, we become more conscious of scapegoating, then the result is not naturally less violence. The result is we've now taken away that one solution that has kept us all from just killing one another. And now we're actually coming much closer to an apocalyptic moment where it says either you're going to go back to that total violence where there is no solution, or you're going to choose this totally new way of being human where you give your life for the sake of your friends. And in that terms, Jesus' self-sacrifice wasn't an angry God wanted blood, but in his own words it is, I give myself because of my love for my friends. And so I think the natural result of people seeing the scapegoating mechanism brings those choices in your face. Either violence is going to escalate again, or you're going to find this radical new way of forgiving and loving, even in the face. Now, what it does to the environment? Well, that's also such a powerful vision of interpreting Girardian understanding of violence. I would love to kind of hear your thoughts from a totally different perspective as well. Whether there was something beautiful you could recognize and all of that.
Well, I was really struck. I'm from Iran, so I was brought up as a Muslim.
Yes.
But I'm not a practicing Muslim. I don't actually call myself religious at all.
Yeah.
I am spiritual, but I'm not religious. I had absolutely no idea what you were going to say, really, to be truthful. But as you were talking, I had so many moments of alignment.
Yeah.
I actually felt really tearful.
Yeah.
I felt really emotional when you were speaking because it was the truth for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was totally the truth for me, what you were saying.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you.
It resonates.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't even use the word God,
Yes.
believe it or not. I don't use that word.
Yeah.
But I know exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful the way... I've never heard Christians talk about Jesus in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I can just share one thing that keeps happening in this place. So when we get in circle, we do lots of chanting for peace sessions. And we do lots of sound work. So it's always in circle. And we do meditations and we pray and we do ceremony. We do all sorts of different things. And Jesus keeps coming in.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why as soon as it happened in a really big way, and Francis's message came, it was like, yes, I don't even know who you are or what you do, but so when I say Jesus keeps coming in, like he shows himself to people, he's shown himself to you, if I can just out you that way.
If I can say that I don't have any relationship with Jesus at all.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't.
I've been a Buddhist since I was 17 years old. I really don't have any relationship until Monday this week.
Wow.
So Jite came to my session. I was hosting the session.
That's
And
so beautiful.
instead of doing what I would normally do, I ended up doing a meditation.
Yes.
And I was just following intuition.
Yeah.
And in that moment.
So in this room, I met Jesus on Monday.
Wow.
You might laugh, it's true.
That's awesome.
What happened to this evening? What happened?
Yeah.
He was holding a small cross. And what came for me was that the cross represented the concepts. It represented our idea of ourselves that we should let go of any idea of ourselves, of who we are and of how we live our lives.
Yeah.
So as he was holding this cross up, he also said, live from this.
Wow.
Don't live from the concept of who you think you are.
Let go of all your
Just
stories, is
let
what
go
you
of
said
that
straight
and
after.
just live from this.
Wow.
Which is very appropriate for this evening.
It
You
is.
saw like a golden light and a golden cross to me. That's what it's saying.
He seems to have a habit of doing that because when I was about 15 years old, I grew up in kind of religious home and Christian home, but I never encountered Jesus in that way. And for me, religion was morality. You live well, you try and not do all the naughty things that they tell you. On one particular day, I was so disappointed in myself that I messed up again. I must have offended God, and I flopped down on my bed in utter disgust. And in that moment, Jesus showed up. And what was shocking is his total acceptance, his absolute love. And I was so surprised because I thought he's the dude that's going to be mad at me. But in this moment, I experienced such acceptance that I knew even if I turned my back on him, ran the other way, he would love me just the same. And so, that is such an awesome story. Thank you. And I'm so honored how these ideas is flowing, because God's entangled, however we want to say that. This is the entanglement of a story that's unfolding in all of us. So when I use the word God, I think that's why you resonate with me. I don't think of some being somewhere else. I think of the very ground of our existence, love. It's this movement between us. That is God. Awesome.
When you said before you might laugh, I don't think we were laughing.
No, I know, yeah.
It was just thrilling.
Yes.
Or
joy.
Yes. And actually, as somebody from Iran, there are incredible testimonies coming out, just like yours, where people are encountering Jesus in the most unlikely, peculiar, strange places, and they always speak of him as the man in white, and there's even a ministry now where people go and stand outside a mosque, and as the Muslim worshippers come out, he will just ask them, have you met the man in white? And some will say no, but if they have, he just asks them to wait to the side, and afterward he actually explains to them who this man is, and they all think it's like a singular, only them encounter, and they find that Jesus is appearing and introducing himself to people all across the Middle East, and it's just incredible to see.
It's beautiful.
Well, a few weeks before this, we had a chanting for peace session, and I think we dedicated it to the people at Standing Rock, the native indigenous people who are basically facing, well, some of them could die now. So we dedicated the whole chant to the people, the water protectors, and so there was a group of people, and in the middle of it, we chant a Sanskrit chant, so it's the Gayatri mantra, which is an invocation to the universal oneness. Right? Yes. So we were chanting the Gayatri mantra, and in the middle of it, I kind of my heart started racing, and I stood up, and my hand went into like a cross position. Yes. I thought, why are you doing this? This is really odd. And then I sort of sat down after a bit. I thought, okay, that was a really weird thing. And then when it finished, we always have a discussion after the chant, and I kind of found, I said, I think Jesus was here. I've never said that in my life, ever. Why would I? I'm not a Christian. It's not in my radar. And the person sat next to me said, she's a pagan. Yeah. And she, that's her religion. And she immediately said, yeah, definitely Jesus was here. Yeah. That was a few weeks, do you remember? Yeah. And so then we had a discussion around Jesus and what that energy means and what. So it's kept happening in the last few weeks, and if you can.
And so, how did you articulate what it meant?
Jesus is love, just like that is Jesus' energy. From it, I work with energies, I suppose. I don't call. So for me, I work with different kinds of energies, and there is only one love. Yes. And he's for me, his frequency, his vibration, his whatever you want to call it. Is pure love. And so when he came to me in that moment, I knew we were in the right place doing the right thing with the right people. Call him Jesus, call him love, call him whatever you want to call him. He's the embodiment of love. Absolutely. And oneness and forgiveness and compassion. Beautiful.
Could I ask you if it's possible for you guys to do that chant? I would love to hear it and be part of it.
Yeah,
That's possible.
if everyone wants to chant, I've got the words. You can. Do you want to chant? Anyone know it?
No. You've got some.
I think so.
Do you think you might come?
He's already here. He's already here.
I never thought this was going to happen.
But the unexpected. A little bit.
You are beautiful people. Thank you so much for gracing this space. Thank you. Much you don't normally have this many people here. Almost perfect.
Can you translate?
As it turns out, yes, I don't know the verbatim translation, but actually I do have it here.
Yeah.
So if I just go through it, so it's which is the sound of oneness. I'm sorry, I'm standing up because I've got backache. I'm not standing up because I'm trying to teach you. So is, and when we chant so you would say the as much as the so the resonance of the is so that is the sound of oneness. It's sort of essentially the sound of the universe, in essence. So that's what you're calling on. So this is an ancient text, and it said that I think it's about 5,000 years old, possibly, and it was so sages were praying, and it was handed to a sage as a gift for humanity. Yeah. So really and it's an invocation to the universal force. So if you just see that, it's an invocation to the oneness, to the all that is, the creator force. Yes. And the actual words themselves, Sanskrit is a very healing language, so the actual words themselves are healing for the human body. So here I have one translation here. They don't obviously. It's many. There are many translations. Wur means embodiment of vital spiritual energy, or prana. You might have heard of prana. So it's Bhuvaha, Swaha. So Bhuvaha, destroyer of sufferings. Swaha is embodiment of happiness. Tat Savitur is that bright like sun. Varinyam is the best choice. Bhargo is destroyer of sins. Devasya is divine.
Oh no, I wonder if
it says these first 9 words describe the glory of God. So that first bit is the glory of God. And Dimahi is meditation, is about meditation. Dio is intellect. Yo is who. Naha, our. Prachodayat is inspire. So basically, Dio Yona Prachodayat is a prayer to God. So the whole thing is a prayer to God, whatever way you want to translate God.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it?
Do you want to chant it?
Yes.
Do you? Really?
Even if we just listen, if we don't get the words, I just so want to share that moment with you.
Would you mind translating it again?
I'll show you. I can email you it if you like. It's basically, that's a broken translation, but it's basically saying it's a chant to the glory of God. Except they didn't use the word God; they used the Creator life force. The Creator is the word they used. So that's really what you're doing. It's a chant to the Creator life force. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or do you want the? I haven't got.
I'd like you to say again what you said.
What translated into English? The translation.
What you said.
So Bur is embodiment of vital spiritual energy, or prana, which is the breath. Bhuva is destroyer of suffering. Swaha is embodiment of happiness. Tat Savitur is that bright like sun. Varinyam is best choice. Bhargo is destroyer of sins, and Devasya is divine. So it's destroyer of suffering, embodiment of happiness, bright like sun, best choice, destroyer of sins, divine. Those are the words. So it's describing the glory of God. That's ultimately what it's doing. 3-1. Did you ever think we would be doing this?
No. It's a song that I never expected that.
I never thought I'd meet Jesus in this room.
That's a good Now you've met this many. So, do you want to sing it?
Yes.
Shall I sing it 3 once and then we'll say it?
Follow.
Which shall I do the other rhythm? Hang on, there's many rhythms. I'll do the other rhythm because it's easier. Om Bhuva Swaha Om Tat Savitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yona Prachodayat Om Bhuva Swaha Om Tat Savitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yona Prachodayat Om Bhuva Swaha Om Tat Savitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yona Prachodayat Om Bhuva Swaha Om Tat Savitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yona Prachodayat. I'll do it slower. Om Bhuva Swaha Om Tat Savitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yona Prachodayat Om Bhuva Swaha Om Tat Savitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yona Prachodayat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
How beautiful to do that with you.
May I ask a question, if Andrew could answer it for me on that? Do you see Jesus as a Christian?
No.
Is he a Christian? Or is he...
Well, he's a
I don't-
Christian, but yeah.
I don't think Jesus is a
So
Christian.
what I'm trying to get at, you said you don't believe in religion as we are fighting that we don't believe in religion, the constraints of religion.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to say, is Jesus a Christian?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
He's for everybody.
No, you didn't say, is
Absolutely.
Jesus a Christian? You said, do you see Jesus as a
Yes,
Christian?
that
Yeah.
was
Two
your
separate
question,
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. My truth is separate to the truth, I presume.
We've been so honoured by your stories, and I can't tell you how it's moved me. It's just so precious.
Thank you.
And, you know, the kind of meditative experience of God has always been a precious part of my relationship with Him. And even as I started reading a little bit, of Thomas Merton, I thought, wow, we share such beauty in common. And so thank you for your generosity and your hearts to welcome us here tonight. And
He came before you.
yeah,
He prepared the way.
I'm overwhelmed with that knowledge. I'm so overwhelmed with that.
Yeah. That was before us.
Thank
did.
you.
Before us. Yeah.
All things possible.
Wasn't that an amazing experience?
Absolutely. I'm so glad I came. I have a thing I want to show you.
Yes.
Is it appropriate to show that image? Yeah. I have an image of Jesus which until that day has actually really disturbed me. And I've never wanted to have it around.
Yes.
So I use, these are all images that they're drawings
Yes.
of different energies that people have seen and then drawn. So some
Yes.
Tibetan ones, the different traditions basically.
Yeah.
And they're all taken from different religions. And there's one of Jesus. So this is around compassion. These are Tibetan ones. Dwal Kul. Do you know? Have you heard of? No, not Dwal Kul. Lao Tzu and Kuan Yin. They're sort of sort of healers of compassion or bringers of compassion. they're all different ones, right? They're all different images, which I could show you. But the one that, and I've always put these out, one because they're very beautiful, two because they just create a really beautiful energy in the room. And the one that is with Jesus, I've always found it really, really upsetting and disturbing until that day.
Yeah.
And from that day, I can really relate to him now. And please don't get upset if you don't like the image. What do you think to that?
Beautiful.
Is that upsetting or is that beautiful? Both.
It's both. I think.
So the significance of these, which I didn't realise until that day, because this is what we were doing. So I work with chakra energy. So I don't know if you work with chakras. So these are energy centres that we know exist. It's not a mythical thing. They actually exist. And we were actually doing an activation with them. And somebody who came new said, "Oh, you haven't got your cards out," because I was rushing before the session. She said, "Oh, you haven't got your cards out," and I said, "No." Yeah. And so I sat down and I thought, "Oh, she wants the cards." So I said, "I'll put them all out, and whichever's the last one will come and join us in the circle." Well, guess who came?
Wow.
So there's a picture on the Tara Centre Facebook page. You'll see he's on the floor in the middle, next to the altar in the middle of the circle.
Yes.
And that's when it happened for you, wasn't it? And now, so these are actually the energy centres. This is the strangest thing. These are these centres I was toning, so we sing to activate these centres.
Yes.
So do you see that as a loving, beautiful image?
I think it's absolutely. I don't like depictions of Jesus, and some are absolutely the Sacred Heart, etc. I just can't bear them. I think that's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, good.
I think it represents life in a way. It's really, always, for instance, in Catholic churches, you see an emaciated Jesus on a cross, and
It's the one the Polish nun had, and it's all these pastoral things coming out. And I just can't.
And I so loved what you shared, that cross, the meaning that came, the experience that came to you is that, in effect, what God was crucifying was our concepts of God. This is where they kind of came to an end. And there's a beautiful text in Colossians 2, because, the predominant view out there is that God needed blood to satisfy his justice. But in Colossians 2, there's this beautiful picture that says, the law with all its requirements, this whole system that demands that you get what you deserve, that is what God nailed to the cross. And so all these ideas of even God embodying our sense of justice is suddenly, that is what comes to an end. So when I look at the picture like that, it's for me both an end and the beginning. It's that disturbing place where my ideas are crumbling and my experience of him is expanding at the same time. Yeah.
We've reached that, I think what you were saying earlier about innate goodness or whatever. In some respects, that conversation needs to stop in a way, because where is it taking us? Yeah, we all have a shadow side. And if we just pretend that we're all good, that's not going to take us anywhere. We all have that shadow side, but it's how we create society in order to bring that shadow side to light. And I feel like the crisis in humanity that's happening now is that shadow is coming to light, and we have one choice. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Whether we're innately good or bad is kind of like irrelevant. We are all going to become extinct unless.
Yes.
We're going to implode basically as a thing. Whether it's the earth, we're the same as the earth, aren't we? We're not separate from the earth. And it feels like Jesus and all the other energies. They're the different religions use different.
Yeah. I
don't know what you think about other religions, but he's come as a teacher to show us the way, that there is only one way. There is only one way. There is no other way. But I don't believe he's the only energetic being that's come. I think, I would
but
respect
life is the way.
a Hindu as I would respect
a
Buddhist. I'm not a Buddhist, but I respect your viewpoint. I think different people have different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've
Beautiful.
definitely this place has, I think, brought that to the fore for me.
What is that noise? Somebody's gone out.
The alarm going to go off.
It's the alarm, but it's alright.
Oh, okay.
Somebody's gone out the wrong door.
Just while you were talking, I was thinking, there is shadow. Light makes shadow.
Yeah,
There is no shadow without a light.
it's true.
And while there's light, the shadow will get smaller.
Mm.
When the light gets, it's a bit of a cliche, but
Yeah.
we all have hope.
Yeah.
If we have light within us, there's always hope.
The light shines in the
So,
darkness, and
yeah.
the darkness.
Nobody switched the dark on. People always switch the
I would-
light on.
Yes.
You have so blessed us with that song, and I'm going to learn it because there's something so. No, it's funny, but me and a friend of mine long time ago, we just had this meditative moment, and we just started doing that.
Yeah, of course.
In a beautiful way. I don't know where it came from, but I know. But you've so blessed us with that song. Can I just pray for you? And
That
for
was so
this
beautiful.
whole area?
Thank you.
And Abba, our source, life giver, creator. We thank you that you have so entangled yourself in our existence. We are so aware of your presence. Thank you for your adoration towards each one of us, Lord. Thank you for the message that you have displayed so powerfully in the person of Jesus. But even today we still just so experience your presence, Jesus, in the midst of this world where with all the movement that's going, we acknowledge that the relationship with God that you displayed, one that loves the other, one that includes the outcast, one that cares about birds and trees and flowers. That is the love that we've encountered in you. And I pray that this work of your self-revelation that you've began in the Tara Center and with our precious friends that we've met tonight, that you continue that work, that there will be such an outpouring of your presence here, that people will come in these doors and know that they're encountering the very life source that sustains them in existence. Thank you, Papa. Thank you, Abba. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Joy. Awesome. Wow.
Awesome.
We've been surprised.
Delighted.
Someone's gone out the wrong door. They lock the building. If people go out the wrong way, it sets off the whole alarm. I'm afraid that's going to stay on now for half an hour. Time to go, probably. The building's got 3 doors, and if somebody goes out the wrong door at this point, good timing, though. Thank you. Oh, thank you.